In episode number 427 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover Jared Leto's return for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
We also have more comic book changes as UCS drops DC Comics for comic book distributing.
And our comic book highlight this week, we review Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn #1.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to the award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am your sleepy pal Kelli.
And I am bodybuilder Daniel. Another lie.
I've been working, fighting battles with your Machokes and your Machamps, and those are the only Pokemon they ever had.
That are actually built and buff? I guess so, yeah. I'm sure there's a few more. Couple strong ones out there.
Oh yeah, the guy who used to lift like the cinder beams,
yes,
whatever. I don't even know. Well, they weren't cinder blocks because they were beams.
Remember that? Did you see that meme of it's cute to sleep with your Pikachu in your bed,
yes,
but it's creepy if you sleep with your Machoke in your bed?
I mean, kind of.
It is, yeah.
The ones that look like people, not okay.
Right. Meanwhile, Scott from Lazy Gaming Guys is like, "What's wrong? What's wrong with that?" I love that Omni on Twitter is like, "I repeat, do not fuck your Pokemon." Really weird subject, though, because...
I love that we opened with this, because now new listeners are like, oh,
what the hell's going on? Well, if they're Pokemon fans, they need to understand, as Scott pointed out, that even in the games, they acknowledge that people marry Pokemon.
What?
It's bizarre as hell.
Who got married to a Pokemon?
It was in the older games. They've since not acknowledged them anymore.
When?
When you read up the bookshelves in one of the houses, it says that a long time ago, people used to marry Pokemon.
No!
And then,
Oh, I never read the bookcases in the houses. This was my problem.
When Scott said that, I was like, that still doesn't mean you get to fuck them, though.
Still doesn't mean it's okay. But I mean, that explains Ash's mom and that Mr. Mime.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. So to any of the listeners that are still around, that actually stuck around for the rest of today's episode, the way we format it is we go through some news first. We head into our Patreon shoutouts, which are thank yous to those of you who make the show possible. We go into our comic book highlight this week, which was voted on by the Brocat Core, and we finish it with the Brocat Block, which is what Pal Kelli and I have been doing this week.
Our first bit of news is on the big screen side, though. Actor and producer Michael B. Jordan from Creed is producing the movie adaptation to Static Shock.
Static is a superhero created by Milestone Comics, which is a company founded by Black writers and artists to drive inclusivity, first appearing in 1993's Static #1.
Jordan said in a statement via The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "I'm proud to be a part of building a new universe centered around Black superheroes. Our community deserves that," end quote.
There was a ton of positive buzz on this one. I think a lot of people our age that watched the Static Shock cartoon and even the Justice League animated series really were fired up about this. And I think after what we've gotten with, inevitably people are talking about, even though it was so late in comic books, Black Panther, but even something early on like Blade, which was a huge hit, I think we could have had a Static movie by now and it would have done great. And I think they're just celebrating that it's happening.
Right, for sure. I definitely think this is a long time coming. Wasn't he also in Batman Beyond? He was like old man Static in a few, still wearing the same clothes.
Well, yeah, he was in the Batman Beyond Future, but that was a Justice League Unlimited episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember watching the Static Shock show, right? And I am not the audience for Static Shock, but I really enjoyed it. I think that he's a fun character that people will really gravitate towards and enjoy.
I did watch some of Static Shock growing up, but that was in that period where I was getting out of those CW. No, it wasn't CW. It was the WB Kids show or whatever they called that block.
Yeah, Saturday mornings.
And I was growing out of that, but I know my little brother, he used to watch Static Shock, the Justice League Unlimited show, and Unlimited. All of those, he was. What was the other one? Samurai Jack, even though that was on Cartoon Network, but it was during that same.
Samurai Jack. What else came on? WB on Saturday mornings. Jackie Chan Adventures was on there.
The
Pokemon,
Zeta Project.
The Cubits, whatever that was called.
Yeah.
Remember like those robots that were all cubes? and Yu-Gi-Oh was on there too.
Right.
Oh man, those were some good times. The times when I used to pretend to be asleep until noon and I was just watching cartoons.
Do you think they're going to go with the title Static Shock, which is more known with comic readers at this point, or will they go with the classic Static?
I think it would be Static Shock. I don't know if I had to guess, unless they're going to make it edgy, because then it would be static.
Well, that's the other thing too, is if they're going to go with the cartoon look of the character where he's writing on the trash cans and the lids and everything that he finds, or with a coat as well, or if he's going to go with the more classic comic book look, which, it didn't go throughout the whole run of the comic books, but he's got the cap on and he's got the suit that's not necessarily a trench coat. They could go either way. They might even show both at one point.
Now, let me ask you, do you think they're going to go, and I think it's really cool that he rides on trash can lids, but trash can lids aren't metal anymore. There's no more metal trash cans.
So they got to update it?
I don't know. You think?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, could he use manhole covers? I would go with that, but then people be falling in manholes all over the place.
I feel like he did use them too.
Did
he used
he
all
use
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Well, I loved that he just took a trash can, like he ran out of his house in that opening every time and like grabbed the trash can lid and he was gone. That thing filled with rain all the time. You know it. But yeah, I have not seen a metal trash can in a long time.
I'm sure they will find a way to make it all work. Michael B. Jordan, do you think he will star in any role for this film?
Maybe like Static's dad. I could really see them going for a younger Static, right? A teenage Static, get that audience in there because, a lot of people are going to go see this. I want to go see this movie right now, right? But again, even looking at the success of the Miles Morales Spider-Man movie, right? He's a younger character and people were really drawn to that. I really enjoyed it even as, a mom. I'm like, that little kid, like help him out, right? And so I would definitely think they're going for a younger Static. So he would play... maybe he'll play the bad guy.
That would be he'd be a great villain. He's an amazing actor. He could really play any role and would absolutely nailed it. But I did ask the Brokehead Core on Twitter what they were most excited to see on this Static live action adaptation. First one here comes from Twitter user @LiveLoveLupe, who said, quote,
I want to see what the costume will be like. Static has had so many wildly varying costumes, and many of them are wacky. I'd almost love to see how it turns out, hopefully without being like some blaxploitation parody, end quote.
I definitely don't want this to be, as he said, a parody or a comedy. It should be treated earnestly. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be any comedy in it at all. I know a lot of that is what the cartoon show was, but it did deal with some heavier themes too, and I think that's what it should mainly focus on. So I'm with you, Lupe. Next one here comes from Twitter user @JBrizzle92, who said, quote, static using trash can lids to fly and seeing Eben translated into live action, end quote. I think that was the main villain in the Static Shock cartoon,
I don't
where
remember.
He was just silhouette.
Ooh,
he was kind of like a shadowy villain.
I mean, that makes sense because he's controlling electricity and you got to fight the shadow monster. I really don't. I remember very little about the show except that I really enjoyed it.
Final quote comes from Twitter user @JeremyORR13, who said, quote,
I think Static is a great fit for the DCEU. Never read the comics, but I loved the cartoon back in the day. It might sound dumb, but I can't wait to see his flying disc in action, end quote.
It will be a really cool visual, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
We were just talking about that and how cool it would be to see him just surfing throughout the city and fighting villains, throwing them at villains, using his electricity, figuring out his powers. There's a lot of potential amazingness for the visuals of this film.
Do you think, especially if they go with a younger Static, like one of those first scenes will be him using his powers to make it to school on time?
Oh, we got to see that.
Yeah, right? So fun. That's what I would do. I'd be like, I can fly on this trash can to get to school.
You think they'll redo the opening in any way?
Oh, I hope so. Like in some capacity, they have to. What a great like nod to fans that would be.
The only thing I will say about the DCEU, when people say DCEU, I immediately think of Zack Snyder's universe, which I guess now is called the Snyderverse. So I don't think we'll see Static or any of these side projects next to any of Snyder's universe. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to see, cameos from these characters like Shazam show up in Static, but I don't think that Static Shock or Shazam or anything like Aquaman 2 are a part of Zack Snyder's continuity. So I don't think it'll fit in that one, but it will do its own thing, just like these other ones have been doing. And so far, based on WB and HBO Max's plans, they are doing both, and that's fine. They can appease the fans that do like the newer stuff that DC was doing, and then fans like ours, and most of our listeners, where we are in for the Snyderverse.
If they're going to have anybody cameo in this movie, I would definitely make it Shazam, because they're both teenagers, right? I think that would just be really funny and a lot of really fun things they could do with that.
This also fits in with what they said at DC Fandom about Static and the other Milestone characters eventually making their way back into the comics. It sounds like Jim Lee was talking about how they have since secured a deal to do more from the Milestone characters in the DC universe. So that's all exciting. We're going to see way more out of it than just this film. But someone else making their return to the Snyderverse. According to The Hollywood Reporter, this was massive news that lit up Twitter like crazy, both in the good and the bad. Jared Leto is returning to shoot scenes for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Even better news, they have also confirmed that neither Geoff Johns nor John Byrne will be receiving credits in the film.
It seems like this Hollywood Reporter article confirmed that the title is Zack Snyder's Justice League and not the Snyder Cut, which, according to DC Fandom, I think it was DC Fandom or the fan event right beforehand, that they were still going back and forth on what they were going to call it. I think most of us are happy that we're getting it at all, so whatever the title ends up being, so be it. But at least in this article, they called it Zack Snyder's Justice League. Jared Leto returning, there was a lot of questions about this. Where's he going to fit in this movie? Some people were still going with the theatrical Justice League cut and saying, oh, so we're going to see that Injustice Gang that they were hinting at. And it said, no. I was telling people that was additional. That was not a Zack Snyder move there, the whole A League of Our Own thing, right?
You don't just kick them out. You're just like, no, leave.
I think it's all going to be nightmare sequence stuff.
Yeah,
we already
for sure.
heard rumors that he was going to be in that world teaming up with Batman along with Deathstroke. So these extra scenes that we're going to get in this nightmare sequences, if we're going to get Justice League 2 and this additional photography is set to set up that world, which is what we're going to get from JL2, then I could see that being some of that additional photography. Others were saying that maybe we'd get some answers as to Dick Grayson's death at the hands of the Joker. So maybe we'll get a flashback scene or at least a setup for Ben Affleck's The Batman series.
How wild is that going to be? Like, this person killed Robin, this pretty much your child that you've helped to raise, right? And now you have to team up with him to save the world. Fuck, I don't know if I could do it. I really don't know. Like, if I were in those shoes and just be like, hey, this guy killed your kid, now you got to team up with him, I'd be like, nah, man, I'll figure it out on my own.
This is far off at this point, especially with the Batman and Justice League 3. But when we eventually get Kelli, just the fact that Jared Leto is coming back as a Joker, there's going to be a lot more interaction between the two characters and this universe. That's one step closer to the new Robin, Kelli, what that means for Bruce's growth in these films, because since Dick Grayson's death in the Snyderverse and everything that went on in BVS and how he didn't trust the alien that was coming into this world and all these Kryptonians, and him growing out of that and learning to trust and promise and all of that, as we saw in BVS, I think a part of that healing also would be eventually taking on that new Robin, Kelli, and trusting in the process again.
Oh, man. It's going to be great. Can I go play Kelli? I'm halfway there. I'm just Kelli.
That's true. Yeah.
Let's be like, I need this role because my name's Kelli. Look at
what
that.
Acting have you had?
I mean, I pretend things so that, my husband feels bad sometimes.
There's a lot of pretending at work too.
Oh yeah, hardcore. My customer service voice is on point.
Jared Leto's return as the Joker. What do you think? Where do you think this fits in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Oh, definitely the nightmare sequence. But I'm super excited for it. I really enjoyed his Joker. I do think that it was an awesome take, and I wanted to see more of it. And I'm happy that we get to see more of it. And under Zack Snyder getting to direct him, like, super stoked to see what's going to happen. And I hope this is just the beginning of all these things. I'm still waiting for a Joker Harley film. Like, I would eat that up for breakfast.
Well, I thought I saw rumors that they were looking into bringing that back.
Oh my
God.
God.
The Margot Robbie, Jared Leto movie.
Can it be directed by Snyder?
Well, we want it to be David Ayer.
Oh.
You know, but we need Ayer's cut. For that movie to happen, I think we definitely need Ayer's cut because the dynamic between those two characters was very different in Ayer's Suicide Squad as opposed to what we got in the theatrical cut. It was very much an abusive relationship, closer to what we have in the comics and not so much a loving one, which, yes, we did enjoy. You especially enjoyed that version of it. And I speak for both of us in which we did like the Suicide Squad that we got in theaters, but it is very different from the trailer, the amazing trailer we got. I think it was at Comic-Con. And if we can get two versions of the film and we enjoyed both of them, that's just an extra win for us. And I think more importantly, though, regardless of whether it's better or worse, just as we said with Zack Snyder's Justice League, that's not the point of all of this. It's for the artist to get that integrity, get his or her cut out there, and put their work as it was intended.
Now you got me thinking about this Joker Harley movie, and we have that comic book review coming up, and I really enjoyed that and have a lot of thought, why'd you do this to me? Oh, now I'm going to be writing fan fiction for days.
Let's keep speculating on what this means, though, with Jared Leto. If he's coming back, you're not bringing on this actor. One, that's where more of the $70 million or whatever the rumored amount is of it's not just a week-long shoot. There's going to be more out of this.
Course.
But if you invest in his Joker, and then there's the rumors of David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad and that Harley Quinn Joker film, that all but confirms that we're going to get more of Jared Leto's Joker outside of Justice League.
I really hope that that's what that means. At the same time, I also really trust, and all signs point to yes, right? Because you got the $70 million, they're investing in reshoots for this movie, and you're not going to do that unless you have bigger plans, right? All that aside, I have so much faith in Snyder and the way that he treated his cast and the loyalty his cast have for him. So I think even if there wasn't that $70 million, even if there wasn't that potential to continue this character or whatever, I don't foresee really any of the cast members being like, no, we don't want to come back and help you fix this atrocity that was done. I am so hopeful, and I do genuinely believe that we will get more of this franchise, and super stoked, right? But really, like, if it were me, I'd probably even at one point just be like, I'll just do it for you, Zack. Like, I just want to get this out here. I really like you as a person. I got enough money because I'm over here winning Oscars or whatever, right? And I definitely feel like, I mean, except for Henry Cavill, who's writing those contracts, that most of them would have come back anyway.
The beauty out of all of this is that Zack will forever have that confidence to never make another studio mandated compromise for his future projects. Thanks to the fact that they are moving forward with Zack Snyder's Justice League and all the support that Zack got from his cast, crew, and the fans, I think he will forever no longer second guess that project. And I think he does have that support from everyone where we would easily rally and notice these changes and these compromises if they tried to do the same thing for Zack. And I think he won't agree anymore to any kind of contract or film or project unless it's 100% his vision. And he's got all of history at this point, right, to back him up on this, where he's like, look what just happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Look how many subscribers HBO Max is getting, and you're not going to let me do my vision or my project as intended. Yes, work under this budget, but don't meddle in and say, hey, make sure you have more comedy in here. We're going to bring on Jeff Johns to rewrite this script. Make sure to put in this or change this character design so it's a little bit closer to the comics. It's none of that, I think, is going to be a problem anymore for Zack.
Definitely not. And I think this has changed the way that movies will be made and the way that, these directors will be handled moving forward. I think forever studios are going to put in their 2 cents. They are going to say, hey, you need to fit this. This is the audience that we're trying to, attract X, Y, and Z, because at the end of the day, and why we really enjoy Snyder's work and trust his vision, at the end of the day, there's also a marketing team that goes into that. There's a whole bunch of moving pieces, and I understand that. But within that, I think that it opens up a really great opportunity for a lot of these directors when the studios start going, well, no, well, no, well, no. They now say, well, let me go talk to the streaming service. Let me tell you them what I have going on. Let me see what I can do to work out with them. Because I feel like we've seen, especially with Netflix and HBO Max, they give these people a lot more leeway because they're able to, because they're not constrained by, well, maybe people won't like this and won't go to see it. Like, it's on your streaming service. And if you get a bajillion, views, that's great. And I mean, you want a bajillion views, but like if something happens, you don't get quite as many, you still have people who are subscribed to your service, right? So I definitely think it's going to change the market moving forward. But realistically, studios will never just say, well, do whatever you want.
That's very much true. And I still think, though, that he will have that extra leeway, as you said.
Oh, yeah. Snyder, for sure. Yeah, he has, for the rest of his life, he has his pick. Because,
free pass, yeah.
Right, he goes and he pitches an idea and says, who's going to make me the best offer? Like, that's Snyder's world now, which is pretty great.
Film Twitter reacted so strongly and negatively to Jared Leto returning as the Joker. Definitely a polarizing reaction from fans, I think, not fans, but viewers, I guess, bloggers, reviewers, on his portrayal of Joker that we saw in Suicide Squad. When you look at the comments section, it's a whole lot of no's, it's a whole lot of yeses. I think the people that were saying no, they were gonna trash Zack Snyder's Justice League regardless, and we know it's gonna get torpedoed, and that's fine. That's not what this is about anymore. It's about getting that project out there. It's about getting the subscribers for HBO Max, and it's also about doing justice to the cast, the crew, and the fans as well. But I think you and I still stand on, there has not been a weak live-action Joker performance thus far in any of these actors. And I think the great thing about it, too, is that each one has been so different in their portrayal and has done their own thing that it's worked out really well for all of them. So many of them got Oscars out of it. We got 2 actors now that have landed Oscars thanks to the Joker. And Jared Leto, who is already an incredible actor, to give him the chance once again to do more Joker, I think that's just awesomeness for the fans, and not only of the character, but also of this universe. Oh,
for sure. I said it before when we did our initial review of Suicide Squad, however many years ago, that this is Jared Leto's Joker is probably the Joker that I'm most terrified of, just because of the way he portrayed him, right? His appearance played a big part in that. The inflection in his voice. I feel like the other Jokers that we got, I guess with the exception of Heath Ledger's, who was kind of really out there, but they were much more put together. They would have these random acts of violence, but you didn't feel like that violence was simmering on the surface the entire time. And with Leto's, it's like any second, you're going to shoot me in the face. Like, we're just having a normal conversation. I think we're joking around. Whoop, now I'm dead, right? And I really got that from Leto's Joker. And I think if he had, the more he gets to portray him, the more he's going to really develop and hone that and just terrify me all the time. It's fine.
The best tweet I saw out of all of this news is, if you're mad now about Jared Leto coming back as the Joker, just wait until you see them confirm Justice League 2, Justice League 3, and his return in the Ben Affleck Batman series. Then they're really going to be pissed off. It's like they don't realize yet that we're getting the Snyderverse back.
Right.
And yes, we need to make sure that Zack Snyder's Justice League is a massive success on HBO Max. But as we said before, again, you don't invest $70 million in a project that is, all right, well, this is, you're going to get your $70 million and that's it, no more. No, there's going to be more coming.
Oh, for sure. And we're here for it. We're living for it.
The last thing I want to say about this news story, too, is still that ongoing confusion of, they're bringing back Jared Leto to do additional photography for this film. So there's these reactions of, okay, so his cut was never finished. In fact, he's doing something completely different. And there's still that confusion on that. And once again, to clear that up, Zack Snyder's 214-minute cut of Justice League was complete, was done. And yes, we were fighting for that. But the difference was last year's huge trend of he's in the studio, he's negotiating not for that 214-minute cut, but for the uncompromised version that he wanted to make before the backlash, before the panic button was hit after BVS. That's the movie he intended to make from the beginning. When he moved forward with the 214-minute cut, that was the compromised version with Jeff Johns' dialogue, with the different character designs that was very different than what we got in the concept stage and that we even saw in BVS when you see Steppenwolf in the baptism scene. That's the version we're getting. We're never going to see that 214-minute cut. I don't think we're going to see the Snyder cut.
No.
We're going to get a better version of that. We're going to see the original intended vision of it.
The Snyder vision, not the Snyder cut.
Correct. Not the Snyder cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Huge difference there, and I think it's way better in the end. So, as we said and joked before in the past, in a way they were right. We're never going to get the Snyder cut. We're going to get Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is absolutely incredible. And this is why we're seeing that additional photography. This is why it's $70 million and not, all right, here's a little bit, just make sure it's all tidied up and finished and we'll release it on whatever. They're putting it on a streaming service. It's 4 hours, not 214 minutes. That alone tells you this is not the release the Snyder cut. This is a whole different thing.
I feel like you could probably do like 7 podcast episodes just about your love for Zack Snyder.
Well, it's very fascinating, all of this. A lot of moving pieces and great stuff we're getting down there.
Well, I think even the most fascinating part of that was the use of social media within all of this. Not just because I'm taking a social media class, Daniel, not just because I'm learning about the power of social media, but definitely the way that the fans came together. And I think that's another thing that there will undoubtedly be a documentary made at some point about the Snyder movement, right? And the Snyder Cut movement and all that you as fans did to try and help get this. And, we'll learn even more about what went on behind the scenes in all those years. And I just think it's incredibly fascinating that when used for good, this platform that was not ever really built, I don't think with this in mind, is, being used to leverage to get these things done. And it's pretty fascinating.
But we will see what else gets confirmed as we end off 2020. Moving forward, though, we do have a lot of comic book news, or at least some heavy topics on it. The first one here is that IDW has informed all retailers that they won't be fulfilling their full orders of TMNT The Last Ronin #1.
We do have a quote here from an email from Diamond that says, quote, regarding TMNT The Last Ronin #1, IDW unfortunately set print quantities in advance of FOC due to considerations stemming from trim size and paper availability. It wasn't an ideal situation, but IDW set an aggressive print run, believing the total would meet the final quantity needed. However, retailer FOC orders far surpassed what was anticipated, regretfully resulting in the allocation of the first printing reflected in the 10/19 invoicing statement, end quote.
To anyone confused, FOC is the final order cutoff date. So this is where comic shops can put in their final numbers. They can up their numbers based on, all right, we got 30 more subscriptions for this title. Let's, instead of ordering 60, let's order 100 or whatever it may be. And in that case, yes, every publisher did have that, all right, well, let's up our numbers based on what these shops have increased their numbers to, and that'll be the final printing of this first print of this issue or whatever it may be. And in this case, it's an odd-shaped book. I don't know if you saw the number 0, the Ashcan edition. It's oversized. It only fits in a life-size bag and board.
Okay.
And it's a very bizarre size. It doesn't, if you use a magazine one, it won't cover the top of it if you use a bag and board. Really bizarre. But that's how all of these issues are going to be, unfortunately. And they said that's a part of this allocation. And for most comic shops, it looks like the orders were cut by 20%.
Wow.
Which isn't a massive amount. I think hopefully most shops will have enough to hit the stands. I know at my shop, we completely stopped taking pre-orders on The Last Ronin #1 because we did get speculators, of course, calling in and trying to get 2, 3, 4, 5 copies. And it's like, no, there's a second print coming. Do you want one of those? And of course they don't.
No,
they don't,
of course not.
I just want to read it, but I need it to be a first print. It reads better if it's a first print.
And can you put it in a bag and board before you hand it to me?
Right. Make sure you get me the nicest copy so that I can read it the best and No, so we're like, no, we're not doing that. We're not going to feed the speculators. Looks like we will have enough for our readership that did get their numbers in even well before FOC. But we don't want to run into that problem of, all right, we got allocated and now we don't know if we're going to have enough. So it's best to just cut off the orders, offer the second printings, and call it a day because, again, we're there to serve the readership and not the speculators or the eBayers or whatever. It is a bit of a mess, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been way more than 20% that got cut on this. This does not happen often at all. Every single time I've done FOC, from what I remember, we don't get allocated on the FOC numbers. So it's going to be a weird situation. I'm sure I'll talk about it next week when the issue actually releases. But if you are looking to read this series, yes, you can always check with your comic shop, but there are second prints coming. You can ask for those if you want your issue guaranteed. If you're like, I really literally just want to read it, I'll settle for the second print. Tell your comic shop now that you want that second printing. And something else that IDW did as a thank you to stores is if you had initially ordered at least 75 copies, they're sending a one per store, The Last Ronin thank you variant.
Oh, cool.
Where the moon and the cover is foiled in, I think, a red. And a lot of comic shops were pissed off about that because they're like, whoa, I didn't order 75 copies initially. I'm a smaller store, so I don't get the thank you variant. And IDW made it real muddy and said, no, every store is going to get a thank you variant. But then they didn't clarify on if there's going to be a separate variant for anyone that ordered under 75 and then another one for anyone that ordered at 75 or higher. We'll find out next week, I guess, but it's...
Did you order 75?
I think we put in for 100.
Oh, ooh.
I'm trying to remember, but...
Are we going to get that variant?
No, I'm not, that variant's going to be over $100 for sure when it releases, and the eBay prices are going to be up there. And I'm not that big of a TMNT fan where it's like, I need that one per... I'm happy reading the story as well, just like anyone else, and I also don't need it to be a first print if it doesn't need to be. But that being said, we had it on our sub well before FOC, and many readers did. We pushed this book hard.
Good.
And it was popular, and a lot of people jumped on it before there was any of this nonsense. There was very casual readers that were like, yeah, I heard about this online. I don't know who was talking about it online, what major YouTube show or streamer or gamer or whatever was talking about it. But non-regulars were coming in asking about it.
That's
and it
awesome.
was before FOC where we're like, yeah, do you want to be down for it? We'll give you a call as each one releases. Yeah, I want to read this. Great, cool. We got a lot of numbers that way, and we're happy to fulfill those readerships and those numbers. So I think they're going to get their copies and we'll be fine for the most part. But I can't speak for any other comic shop out there. I don't know what their situation is, how low they ordered, how much they got cut. It's going to be a mess regardless.
Yeah, but like from IDW's perspective, right? And according to Diamond, they, way ordered over what they would think they need, and now it's not enough. And listen, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sure. And having fewer copies available, yes, you're going to have the speculators who are upset about it, but then you might also have, regular readers who are saying, oh, well, this is really popular. What's going on? Let me try to pick this up too, even if it's a second printing. Oh, this is great. Let me stay on for it, right? This could potentially feed that desire and get more people to subscribe to the book and make more money ultimately.
It will absolutely help with those subscriptions because a lot of people will say, well, if I had that much trouble getting number one, I'd better secure my 2, 3, 4, whatever the miniseries is, and subscribe onto there. So that does help shops. It does help IDW. I'm sure IDW is they're probably still upset about it, where they couldn't sell their maximum amount and fulfill everyone's orders.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they sold out of all of those premium. It's a higher priced book. I think it's $5.99 for this thing. So they're making a lot of money. Comic shops are going to make a lot of money, and readers, eBayers are probably going to make a lot of money, and readers are going to get a really great, from what looks to be so far, a really cool story out of it.
We do have another quote here, though, from IDW Publishing, who said, quote, "We apologize for this unfortunate situation. It's our hope that these efforts will ensure that retailer sales expectations for The Last Ronin #1 are still met, and we've taken steps to ensure that orders will be met in full for issue number 2 through 5. So, perfect. They're already finding a solution.
And based on the fact that every shop ordered so many copies and IDW went really high in the print run, that's already telling you that there's a lot of copies of this book out there. So just a heads up to anyone that has these false hopes of, I'm going to sit on this and then 80 years from now, it's going to be $1 million book. There's a lot of copies of this book out there. It's never going to be $1 million book. So get it if you enjoy it, get it if you want to try to collect it as well, but don't get this as a long-term investment. There's a lot of them out there. They have since immediately solicited, as we mentioned, a second printing for issue number 1, but for now, the first print of number 1 will be out on Wednesday, October 28th.
Continuing with some comic news, DC Comics has announced that it is dropping UCS as a comic distributor.
American retailers who went through UCS, including our shop, will now have to go through Lunar distribution, and DC has also set a minimum order of $500 a month. Stores that order below that won't be able to carry or order any DC books at all. That's a $500 mark at stand price. So let's say a book costs $3.99 on the stands. It costs retailers, based on however many they order, $2 to $3 a copy. Then they're going off of the stands price. So it's actually very easy to hit that $500 mark. This is limiting tiny stores, though, which is unfortunate. And that is a problem for very tiny shops like that. But people pointing out online that those stores will probably just say, look, it's such a small number that we're already ordering. We're ordering less than $500 worth a month. They're probably just not going to order DC, and they'll be fine for it. They'll focus on Indie and Marvel instead. That is going to hurt, though, those subscribers that were specifically getting DC books at those small stores. I don't like that there's a minimum order. I think that's a shitty thing to do, and I think that's, once again, a very Marvel move. We have 2 Marvel comics out there right now in DC and Marvel, and I am not a fan of it, but that's the reality of the current situation right now.
It is really crappy, and it makes me sad because I was rooting for you, DC Comics. I've been rooting for you this whole time, and you're just making it more and more difficult.
Well, there is a twist to all of this, because at first the story was that DC dropped UCS. According to Midtown Comics, who are the owners of UCS, they chose not to renew their distribution contract with DC Comics. And some of that is them saying that, one, it is a huge hassle to handle the DC books on top of everything else that they were already doing. And it's a huge number. There's a lot of shops out there that they were sending these out to, but that this is also their move of, we don't want to distribute DC books. We want them to go back to Diamond and have that be the distribution instead.
I like how they came out and they'd be like, no, you didn't drop us. We dropped you.
Yeah, I didn't break up. You didn't break up with me. I broke up with you. That's exactly what this is.
Years back, when Marvel was self-distributing through Heroes World, they had a minimum of 3 copies per any title to qualify for ordering at all. So at least DC's not doing that and saying you have to order 3 of everything.
Many retailers are still hoping, once again, that DC will re-sign up with Diamond distributors. I'm hoping so too. They did say that next month they're going to have an announcement for retailers and that there's going to be some sort of program for retailers. We don't know what that means. We will cover it here on the show.
Of course.
But that could be a positive thing. That could be a negative thing. That could be literally anything. And I'm leaning towards the negative based on DC's behavior this year.
We'll see. I hope it's not anything negative. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm not going to speak it into existence. Hopefully it's they're going back to Diamond to make everything easier. But at the same time, we didn't know what Diamond did either. So I still say Diamond's kind of shady. But, you know, I'm just rooting for DC. That's all I'm doing.
You don't want to get Jeppy on your bad side. The Diamond did nothing wrong. There's going to be a lot of problems. I wonder if Steve Jeppy got to these UCS people. Maybe threw some trucks into the Gotham Bay. You're
going to end your alignment with the DC Comics.
And next we'll go after Lunar. Let's hope that they have a very successful fourth quarter. Mr. Jeppy, you've gotten mad with power.
I don't know. He doesn't have anything to see. It's true. I have.
All right. Well, that was anticlimactic. I still think, this is all Steve Jeppy's doing. He's going to win at the end of the day. Now I'm rooting for him. He favorites our tweets sometimes.
Does he really?
I like it. Yeah.
All right. I like Steve. Do you talk about him being a Gotham mob boss during those?
No, not at all. I just tag him in the previews pickups like, look, Mr. Jeppy, we're supporting you.
Oh, okay.
You know? Just keeping him off our backs.
I thought it was like I saw a big drug bust the other day. Steve Jeppy, do you know anything about this? And he's like liking them, and I'm like, yeah.
As long as he's not tweeting to any more porn actors, I think everything's fine.
Let Jeppy do what he wants.
I think you're right. Yeah, just let him. He's what, in his 70s, 80s?
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
What did he tweet to the porn actresses?
He kept inviting them out to the Baltimore Stadium because I think he was an owner of them at one point, and inviting them out to all these lavish
clubs that he owns.
Clubs and all kinds of stuff all throughout Gotham. And
you want to come to a poker game?
They're all up there, I think. I don't think he deleted them. They're still up on Twitter.
Yes. Steve Jeppy, my hero.
But that does wrap up our news for this week. Let's head into our thank yous to everyone who makes today's show possible. It is our Patreon shout-outs.
Our first shout-out this week goes out to Corey B. on Twitter at Comicstropolis.
Corey tweeted, quote, "To hell with people, I'll make my own. Extremely intelligent, always considerate of others, first generation to attend college, very proud father here, hashtag National Sunday," end quote, along with pictures of his son.
Aww, I love that. I miss National Sunday, but I love my kid too.
I love that mentality. To hell with people, I will make my own. And that's exactly how I'm thinking of that too. Like, I see Leo as also this product of incredible genes. And so far, he's been incredibly healthy. He's a smart boy. I would say there hasn't been any major issues health-wise, mental-wise with little Leo.
I mean, he doesn't like to talk.
He's a little behind on his talking. No, he likes to talk, but he just doesn't.
His speech. He doesn't say real words.
Right. Yeah. He still doesn't have. He's got his S's down. He doesn't have his M's or N's, L's.
Nope.
He can do his D's. He can do his B's. But I think that's more common than, the negative.
I'm sure he's also not around a lot of kids. He's around adults who understand everything that he's saying. He's not like in a daycare where he actually needs to say things for people to understand. So yeah, he just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Up next, we have Abdul Red Haji on Twitter at rganganfar.
rganganfar. He put out this best tweet. Very simple, and I like it. I retweeted it. It was, quote, "Fuck you, Joss," end quote.
Yeah.
Every day is a good day to fuck you, Joss. Fucking Joey Whedon.
Up next, we have Manu on Twitter at ManUnited0710.
In response to The Boys showrunner saying all superheroes are, quote, inherently MAGA, end quote, Manu tweeted, quote, "Wow, for real. And here I was thinking Superman was created by two Jewish immigrants who just wanted to give hope to others sharing a similar plight. But hey, I am not the one who writes The Boys. Whatever would I know," end quote.
I thought that too, but I guess I've been wrong this whole time.
Yeah, you got to listen to The Boys showrunner.
All right.
That was one thing I'm already anti-Amazon already. So when this quote came out, I was like, this piece of shit, look at this fucking piece of shit show. And people were like, no, read the actual article instead of the quote. And I'm like, all right. Oh, this fucking piece of shit show just confirms it all even more. Goddamn Amazon and their shitty ass shows. And this also confirms it because no, superheroes are not all inherently MAGA. Although I could be wrong though. Manu clearly said I was under the impression too that it was a Jewish creation.
What would you have done if Amazon picked up the Snyder Cut? Is that your nightmare sequence right there?
That's my nightmare world right there. That's one of those things of what happens when the immovable object meets the irresistible, or what is it? Immovable force meets the irresistible object. That's exactly what it would have been. The shop owner, he's also anti-Amazon because they're out to put out local shops out of business. You talk to Bobby, who works at a local game shop, and he's also very anti-Amazon, but they picked up and they're producing the Invincible cartoon. And Invincible is his favorite comic book of all time. And that's when I was like, man, that puts you in a tough position because I'm trying to provide solutions. I'm like, why don't you just wait for the Blu-ray to release? And he says, no, but then Amazon would still get a cut of those profits. And I said, why don't you just fucking pirate the show? Like, Jesus, or don't watch it. You could also just not watch it. But yeah, I would be in a tough position too of, would I then immediately become an Amazon shill because of that? I don't think I would, because that they greatly affect negatively impact my job, whereas the Snyder Cut does not negatively impact. So it's not like me not supporting it at that point would negatively even impact that. Yeah, that would be a tough one. Nightmare sequence for sure. But I think I would end up most likely just doing the Blu-ray one-time buy and not becoming like an Amazon Prime subscriber like we are with HBO Max. Full on for life every year. Sign me up for the year, HBO Max. Thank you.
Our final shout out this week goes out to Jimmy.
Huge thanks, Jimmy, for backing the Reasons I'm Broke podcast for Patreon, and also to Manu, Abdul Red Haji, and Corey B. Thank you so much. If you too would like your shout out and help out the podcast, head on over to patreon.com/The Reasons I'm Broke for as little as $1 a month. You too can get your shout out.
But of course, the podcast will always be free. The best thing you can do is let other people know about us. Let your friends know. That's how we get most of our subscribers, is through word of mouth. But you could also wear an awesome t-shirt.
That's right. We've got t-shirts, mugs, phone cases, masks. If you still don't have a really cool face mask, you can head on over to thereasonsimbroke.com, click on the pull down menu, click on merch, and you will see our curated TeePublic store right there. T-shirts are available in a variety of colors, so are mugs. You've got sweaters coming up if you live up north and it's getting ready to get into those winter seasons. You got sweaters, all kinds of hoodies as well, different styles, and the proceeds do go back into the podcast.
And now we can move into one of my favorite segments of the day, our comic book highlight as chosen by you.
Every Wednesday morning, we put out a new comic book day poll asking which comic we should cover this week. So make sure to check that out on Twitter at Reasons I'm Broke. But the one chosen this week is Batman White Knight Presents Harley Quinn #1, written by Sean Murphy and Katana Collins. Art by Matteo Scalera, and colors by Dave Stewart.
This will be a spoiler-full review because I do really like this book, and I think there's a lot of great things to talk about within it. So if you haven't read it yet, you don't want to know what happens, you can go ahead and skip ahead. But this book does take place after the events of the White Knight.
Curse of the White Knight.
Yeah, Curse of the White Knight. It's from Harley's point of view, where she is now, right? She's had the twins, she's raising them. She's all by herself, just doing her Harley thing. And I thought it was really well put together.
I highly recommend that you buy and read Batman White Knight and Curse of the White Knight before you read White Knight Presents Harley Quinn #1. There's a lot of backstory, and there's a lot of confusion as to why is Bruce Wayne in jail? How come everyone knows he's Batman? What happened to Gordon? Where is the Joker? Did she kill the Joker? All of that is answered in those two maxi series. So pick up those trades first before you read Curse of the White Knight #1. But as you mentioned, it is told from Harley Quinn's point of view. It tells you there's two Harley Quinns in this universe. There's the animated series version, and then there's the modern Harley Quinn from the comic books, and they both exist in this universe. It's kind of Sean's way of including both characters in this world, and this is Harleen Quinzel, the one that you and I relate the most to, the one that you and I grew up with, and I think that is the one that we should follow, at least for now. I wouldn't be shocked if they did a Neo Joker miniseries in the future, but she seems to be the villain, at least in this first story arc. We're getting background on the Murphyverse, what her origin was, how she fell in love with the Joker, not Joker really, but Jack. And Jack Napier is her puddin', whereas for Neo Joker, it is actually the Joker. So that's where the two Harley Quinns also fit into this. But they also build up that relationship between Bruce and Harleen, and how that's still growing and fostering, even though they can't really see each other in full. They're giving you good parallels on the two characters, on how her and Jack were underneath the table, and then Batman ended up underneath there too. So it kind of gives you those connections there, and really neat imagery between all of this. And you can see how she does have feelings for both of these characters, but it also shows you her struggles as a mother, handling twins, first-time mom, and kind of admitting her guilt to Bruce of motherhood, and her saying, and him giving her that support of, no, that's all normal in his mind. He's saying, you're still a fantastic mom. You're not neglecting them. You're not doing this or that. And he's that pillar of support for her that she needs right now. And so is Duke Thomas, who is checking on her at Bruce's orders.
Yeah, there were. I mean, I really, and when we were talking earlier about the Joker Harley movie potentially, I really liked this origin story. And if you had told me like, oh yeah, they met like before they were both crazy, I'd be like, nah. But I really like it. She's working as, I don't know, a go-go dancer, and Jack Napier's going just to see her, and she's just trying to pay her way through medical school. And they meet and kind of recognize that darkness in each other, kind of recognize, that similar mindset, and that's what kind of starts the spark with them. And I just thought that the way they interacted was just so much fun, and then that even more solidifies why she would really fall for him later and say, well, I loved who this person was before he was insane. Let me stick around with him because I know who he is deep down, even though that isn't who he is right now. I really like her and Bruce together, and like I'm a big fan of Bruce and Selena, but I think he and Harley are cute. I totally like related and just wanted to hug her when she was like most of the time my favorite part of the day is when somebody else is watching my kids so I can have a break. And I'm like, Harley, I feel you some days. Like some days be like that, especially with two, but you can tell that she still really, really loves her kids. And I think it was just a very raw and very real book. And, for anybody who has maybe stuck around in a relationship too long because of, what you saw in the very beginning, or someone who has kids and know those struggles of, oh, you're only going to get them down for an hour. And then, then it's back into it because they're going to be crying again. I think just has a lot for people to relate to.
I feel like this is going to also be the story of her struggling with that darker side of herself. You're seeing her destroying these toys, handling these knives, and kind of having these outbursts at the seams and that pressure. And I think when she eventually confronts Neo Joker again, that's going to represent her darker half. And by the end, she's either going to I think she's going to handle that darker side to herself and kind of admit that, no, I'm not that person. I'm not you. I'm not Neo Joker. And I think, but for now, we're going to see that struggle as she descends into it. And I'm sure there'll be a moment of weakness before we get that confrontation against Neo Joker.
Yeah, I think at the end, it's really going to be about Harley realizing that she doesn't have to go to that dark place because she has a safety net now. And that's the biggest difference between the community she has now and Jack Napier is Joker wasn't ever there to be that safety net to pull her out of that. Whereas now she has a team of people around her that are able to help.
By the end of it, do you want her to end up with Bruce? Do you think that's the representation of this good side, especially now that Jack Napier isn't there?
I don't know. Don't ask me that. I mean, I like their interaction, but of course he's in jail. So what's she really going to do with him in jail? I think if, Jack Napier could stay sane, I did really like who they were when they first met, but it could also be a representation of you grow up and, you think that this is what you need. And then you find out that you don't need someone who's like you. You need someone who's opposite from you so that you can have that balance in your life.
I do want to touch on the artwork as well by Mattel Scalera. I think they did try to fit that into Murphy's White Knight universe. The character designs are obviously there and they look like exactly what we saw in the other ones, but it is a more digital look. It's not as rough. It's not as scratchy. It's not, at the end of the day, it's not Sean Murphy, and Sean Murphy did the amazing cover to cover A, and I think cover B as well. I'd have to check that out, but the look does look more digitized than your standard Curse of the White Knight. So that's where I was a little bit lost, and I had to kind of accept that this is not Sean Murphy. This is not the same exact artist, but he does have his hand in the writing at least. So he's kind of directing the way that this all unfolds in the end, probably knows the bigger picture and the bigger plan to all of this. But that was my only takeaway that was negative out of this title, is it doesn't look like that hand-drawn stuff, which I really like.
I can't say that I didn't notice a difference until you said it right now. So maybe going back and looking at it, but I think for a standard reader, that's not something that's really going to catch their eye. It did still very much feel to me like the same world that we've built previously.
My overall thoughts are, if you did enjoy Curse of the White Knight in the Murphyverse, this is absolutely a must pick up. But if you didn't read those or you don't want to invest in the two trades, then you can probably pass on it. I wouldn't say it's safe to just jump into this.
Yeah, I I wouldn't even say that you really need to read all of them because I didn't finish reading Curse of the White Knight. I know what happens. I would say if you really like Harley Quinn and her character, and this is a great way to dive further into her and see a new take that I'm really enjoying thus far, I would just say find out what happened in those 2 books if you don't want to invest in them, but you really want to invest in Harley.
Huge thanks to the Brokehead Core once again for voting in on this week's poll. It was between this and the Robin King, and Harley Quinn ended up winning on this one. I thought you were going to
say Sonic. I was going to be like, oh!
Every other week it's Sonic.
Dodge the bullet. Dodge the bullet.
But let's head into the final portion of this week's episode. It is what Palpa, Kelli, and I have been doing this week, the Brokehead Block. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with Twitter news and Twitter drama, I guess. Our @ReasonsI'mBroke account was suspended last week.
Ooh.
And I showed up on, I want to say it was Monday morning or Sunday morning. And I checked my Twitter account and it's giving me the error. And then it tells me that my account has been suspended. And I'm like, all right, so which tweet got me in trouble? It wasn't a matter of why. It was which tweet got me.
I'm surprised it took this long.
well, that's the thing. I've been suspended before.
Oh, okay.
So I think once or twice before. So at this one, normally it tells you, hey, you've been suspended. Click here to reactivate your account. And I did. But this time it didn't give me that option. So I'm like, ooh, this might be the permanent one. And that's when I had to go onto the Twitter website. I looked on Google and people are like, hey, this happened to me several times already. This is what you got to do. You got to appeal to Twitter and don't just, don't tell them angrily, what the fuck is going on here?
Flash them your nipple. And
send them dick pics. So what is going on here? But no, I don't know which tweet it was, but my account is suspended and they didn't give me answers. They didn't tell me what tweet it was. They just said your account was flagged over what do you call it? Not a violation of our Twitter rules. If this happens more often or in the future, it could result in a permanent suspension. And then they reactivated my account within a couple of hours. So it did clear out a bunch of my muted accounts. So I had to go through and now that I see a bunch of accounts and I'm like, no, I don't want to see that account. So I have to remute accounts again. But outside of that, I did make a backup account just in case. It's called @TRIB So stands for The Reasons I'm Broke. And it is on there. I did add a bunch of you that regularly follow or have long time followed on there. So you might have gotten that notification. I know Brian, he sent the heads up of, is this you or is this like a troll account? What's going on? I'm like, yeah, it's definitely me. Thank you for checking first. So I did retweet it. I put out a notice that this is the backup account just in case. I don't know if it'll work if I get a permanent suspension. I have no idea. I don't know what tweet it was. Once again, there was a lot of drama going on last week, especially with the boys, with the RTSC book account. So it could have been any number of those tweets. But regardless, just wanted to give that heads up. And the account is back, but there is that backup account. Once again, @TRIB And there will now be links in every episode moving forward for that in the description.
I had some Twitter fun times. I think I actually talked about it last week, but I had this huge assignment about Twitter and it took me like hours because I had to like post and retweet and create lists. And I created a new Twitter for it because I don't think you all want to see my #MCO335 floating around on every single tweet, but I got 100 on that assignment. So I was proud. I have now been certified to use the Twitter. I still don't really understand it, but that's fine.
You also have not retweeted any of the stuff we tagged you in.
Yeah, because I'm not signed into that account anymore.
Gotcha.
Because I have to sign into my school account. So
that explains that.
There you go. So this week I get to dive into the Pinterest, which is very exciting. So I'm not making a new Pinterest. I'm just going to use my old one because I have to create 2 boards with 20 pins each. And I'm like, shit, I already got 2 boards with 20 pins each. Except I have to put my own comments in them. So I'm going to have to go back and pin some more things. Yeah, it's really stupid. They're like, when you pin it, put your own comments and like hashtag MC. And I was like, oh, son of a bitch. So it's fine. I'll just tag some more recipes or things.
Let me know what you find out if you learn anything new about Pinterest. Right now, we get 1.2 million views every 30 days.
That's
on
amazing.
Ours. We hit, I think, 2,000 followers recently or 1,200. So our Pinterest does really well, but I know very little about it. I guess I'm using it well. I'm doing it right. But
fun fact, Pinterest is actually the social media platform where you can get the most organic subscribers.
I know you can get clicks to your websites, especially like really well on there.
Yeah. Pinterest is, so if you're and I'm diving more into it now. I did it a few semesters ago, but if you're diving into like paid ads versus organic ads, which is where you don't pay anything, you just like send them out. Pinterest is where you should never pay on Pinterest. You should only ever do organic ads because that's where you get the most subscribers or whatever through that. So now you know.
I know one of the major changes for you has been the move, your parents' move.
Yeah. So my parents did officially move this week. They're completely 100% out of their home today. I think we've talked about it before. They were our next door neighbors, which has been great, especially having Leo. They've been there through that whole process. I see them almost every day. Both of us are really close with our families, which is pretty amazing. So they have moved. It's only about 15 minutes away, but I mean, still, like if it's 7 p.m., I can't just be like, Leo, let's go over for 10 minutes and come back home and, get ready for bed. So it is difficult. I'm having a much harder time than Leo. I thought he would have a really hard time with it. He hasn't. He just walks in the house and he's like, "Whoa!" And then we take him over to the new house and like he realizes, okay, this is where they live now. But yeah, it's tough. They're mixed about it because they love being next door to us too and seeing us as often. And they know that that's not going to happen quite as often. So I've been trying to help them with that. I had to go and kind of take over yesterday because they still had a bunch of stuff to move. And they're like, we're not going to get this all done before the closing. And I was like, no, you're going to do this, this, and this, and this, and you'll be done. And they were done by 11 a.m. today. So I was like, yeah, I just had to go put on my cruise director pants and and get it taken care of. But that's been the biggest like personal thing going on in life this week. Work is still really, really busy, which is awesome. But, trying to balance that and school and Leo and family and everything. There's just a lot on my plate. So I'm getting through it. I got 43 days of school left. And I already told my assistant manager I'm taking 3-day weekends like till I graduate. Like I don't, at least every other week. I just don't have the option not to. If the store is going to be there, right? They don't really need me. I have to focus on this and get these things done.
Speaking of stores and work, ours have been kind of preparing a little bit. At least I've been mentally preparing for the holiday season, but I'm doing it like I used to every other year. But this year's 2020. How many people are going to? I have this thought and prediction based on how well sales have been at the store, where I do think we're going to have a strong holiday season. Yes, more people are going to be shopping online due to not leaving their house, choosing to not go out in public. Many stores still restricting, including ours, how many people are in the store at a time due to COVID. But on my end, I'm thinking, well, in previous years, when you get into mid-December to late December, you get a lot of very desperate shoppers that are looking anywhere local for any kind of gift or for that one item. And we end up serving those customers really well because it's like, no, we don't have that, but we have something like this. And then they end up buying that or they're like, I can't get it in time through online. So do you guys have it here? And it's like, yes, we do. It's going to be right here. And I think we're going to see more of that this year, especially as these online retailers struggle to meet that demand. And there's a lot of shipping problems still through UPS, through the post office that I don't think they're prepared enough. I think people, if you're going to order something online, you better do it now. Don't wait till November, December to do that shopping. Get that shopping done today. Get it done this month if you can, because it's going to get very difficult by the end of the year. But that all aside, once again, I think we're going to have a very successful holiday season. So I'm trying to see what are we going to carry extras of? Should we get extra pops? We already have a huge shipment of pops coming. So maybe that'll last us for the rest of the year. Starting to get into that mode. And that ends up being a very blurry November, December, because those go by incredibly quick, especially if you work in retail.
Yeah, I don't think people really, unless you work in like retail, I don't think you realize how early the holidays start because our holiday season technically starts like November 6th. And so, the schedule is already out for that. So my brain is already in holiday mode of, my product is on the shelf waiting to go out. I have my team set up to put all that stuff out. And, it sounds like it's exactly the same for you. So yeah, I don't think, and our holiday season lasts until February. So
that's true.
So it's definitely, you and I are getting into probably the craziest times of our year. And I'm always incredibly thankful that we both, even though it's food service and retail, it's similar enough that we both understand what our lives are going to look like for the next 3 months, and we can be supportive of each other within that. So yeah, I'm pumped. I'm ready. We're already having, a record-breaking week this week. So for you, I really wouldn't anticipate your holiday season being any slower than it ever has been.
I'm also excited to see Leo enjoy the holidays in a different way now that he can comprehend presents way more. He had an awesome birthday. So it's going to be exciting just to see him enjoy the holidays with both families.
I love that we're also in a place, and I know we were like this last year, but we're in a place where you and I get the holidays off, so we can actually spend that time with him, with our family. And when I say holidays off, I mean the day of the holiday.
Christmas Day.
Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, those ones where we can actually spend it with our families and spend it with Leo and enjoy, because several years ago at my previous job, that wasn't the case. It was, mandatory that I work those. So
I still remember those years where they kept trying to push Black Friday earlier and earlier into Thanksgiving Day. And I was working at GameStop at the time, and they tried it that one year of Thanksgiving night, we're going to be open and we're going to be selling consoles, buy two, get ones, all of that shit. And that was the first year they were trying that out. And I think that was the last year they tried that. I don't know if they did it since, but the whole thing was, we were busy for the first 30 minutes. And guess what? It died off.
Right.
Nothing. And we were open overnight. And it's like, what a waste of manpower.
I'm really appreciative too, because in previous years, the company that I work for, because of Black Friday, used to be open until, 9, 10, 11 at night. And they said, nope, not this year. It will probably be busy. We probably could make the money, but let's close early and, let our people go home and be with their families. And I'm very appreciative. I mean, I'm up 50%. How much more money do you really need to make? But I am very appreciative for that.
One milestone I did hit this last week. Yeah, that last week of we're recording this. So, and I didn't discuss it. I know some very close Brokettes know about it, but last week I hit 1 year of sobriety from alcohol or any mind-altering substances, they say, but my thing was alcohol. And I hit 1 year without it this past, so that was on October 18th is my sobriety date. And the reason I didn't discuss it on the show is, one, I don't think it necessarily pertains to the podcast. But the other thing, too, is I used to always record this, for the most part, I used to record the podcast, especially over the last couple of years, with a drink in hand. And a year ago, that was a struggle for me of, I used to think that drinking would make me more confident, would make me funnier, would make me smarter, was this magical elixir, right, that would solve all my problems. But, I didn't realize how much it had turned on me over those last couple of years. And me doing this podcast sober was another thing that I had to relearn to do sober, aside from living life sober and interact, just talking to people soberly. It was a huge moment of growth. And I think until you actually go through that yourself, I think a lot of this won't land with normal drinkers because they can take it or leave it, and that's fine. But on my end, it was, learning how to talk to people again. And normally it's like, all right, I'd be, at least buzzed or drunk or obliterated when I'd be, having fun or recording this podcast or whatever. And the thing about that is you don't remember a lot of it anyway. So what growth was I making at that point? So now over the last year, though, it is starting to relearn all of those things and getting that confidence from within and not because of an outside thing and that inner growth. So I felt like when I hit a year of sobriety, then I feel like I can at least talk a little bit more about it, not in a matter of I'm ashamed of it or I'm embarrassed, but in a matter of I know a little bit now, I know a little bit more. So that's kind of where I'm approaching this. And the reason I do bring it up too is in case anyone out there might have that similar, I do know that some Brokettes are also recovering alcoholics or recovering addicts. And it's just, we kind of find each other naturally. It's kind of interesting how just speaking that language or knowing it or whatever it may be. So I think that's neat that there's many people out there that have that recovery behind them or have that support behind them or in each other or with others But it's also an example of until I saw someone else that either recovered or was struggling with it, that I could identify it within myself. So I think it was important for me to share that as well, in case it might be, as you mentioned, a help to someone else. And I think that's the main thing. It's not about me and my recovery. It's about if someone else out there can get that message and might need that help, then that's, I think, a positive for sure.
And I just want to say within that I am so incredibly proud of you. I know that it has been a struggle. I remember that first podcast that we recorded, afterwards, and you were so down on yourself, and, you felt like this was something that you couldn't do. And I mean, definitely our numbers show otherwise, right? We're thriving, and I've seen your confidence grow just, as a person, and being able to sort through problems and face those bad days and just be like, no, I need to face this head on. So I am incredibly proud of you. I'm going to cry. But just you've taught me a lot through this year. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Now you're going to make me cry too. Now it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful feeling, but I know I'm just at the start of this growth. You don't change years of behavior mentally. It's more than just about drinking or whatever drug someone may or may not have done. It's about learning how to grow and act, and how to, not stunt that growth anymore. It's not about numbing out your issues. It's about, as you said, going through them. It's not about going around them anymore. And that's something that has taken me a long time to just start to learn and realize. And it's a long time path. And I think it's important to have it be a long time thing and a forever thing, because it's not something that it's like, all right, well, I recovered now and now I can drink like everyone else. That's not the way this thing works. It really is a disease, and it's something that someone like I related so much to when Ben Affleck was going through that journey as well, especially looking back on it too. And it's interesting how, unless you're in it as well, you don't really realize how the dark journey that is, and where that recovery can go. So I appreciate the encouragement and the words. It's I wouldn't say it's something that I deserve. It's just something that I have to continue. I don't want to get cocky. I don't want to get confident over that. It's just as they say, one day at a time, and doing your bit, doing your work. And I think this is a part of it too. So I do want to say that I greatly appreciate also the listeners. As you mentioned, this has been our best year in numbers. So whatever my performance may or may not have been before the year is different than what it is now. I think that's true, but I also think that I have been more conscious of what I say on the show, what I put into the show as well. And that's not to say that I wasn't trying before that, but now it's like, all right, I'm really in the moment of, okay, this is what we did last week. This is what we did the week before. It's not just, going through this show or through life and on autopilot. It is actually being aware of what these things are and what the show is. And I am glad and I'm grateful that, yes, the numbers have been great. As we've said before, though, we don't do this for the numbers or the stats, but that is a nice confirmation that, once again, we're going in the right direction, and that we are doing things for this hobby, not necessarily because we have to do it or because it's work for us, but because we enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this, and I've enjoyed relearning how to do this over the last year.
But on that note, we will wrap up our podcast for this week.
Thank you so much, Brokehead Core. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Reasons I'm Broke, or at
Palpa Kelli, Kelly spelled with an I.
Also on our backup account at TRIB Pod. I've been Bodybuilder Daniel.
And I am Sleepy Emperor Palpa Kelli.
And Brokehead Core. All will be well. So am I sexy Machamp now that I'm Bodybuilder Daniel? Am I underneath a waterfall, just like that Pokemon card?
Do you want to be?
Just for this week, I guess.
Are you wearing your little black Speedo?
That's another question. We're going right back to the beginning of the show. Is that a part of his body, or is that something that they wear? There's a lot of questions because then that goes to Jinx as well. The male and female Machokes also have the Speedo. So there's a lot of questions here.
Oh man, that's too many questions. Why are you ruining my childhood for me like this?
Blame the old designers to Pokemon because they made them people-ish as well and not just animals.
I mean, I guess it would have to be part of their body because if you look at Mr. Mime, right, he's wearing clothes, but that's very much a part of his body. Right. So yeah, sure, it's a part of his body. You never see him wear anything different. So yes. And if not, who's like making Machamp underwear?
Right.
And why does he suddenly have it on when he evolves? No, it has to be part of his body.
I still love in Detective Pikachu when they show the Machamp directing traffic with all his arms, but as he's directing, he's like posing like he's in a competition, which is really hilarious. I feel like Julian would just sit there at the crosswalk, like I'm just watching him direct traffic.
I'm just waiting for my friend, but I'll just.
I missed my opportunity. I better wait some more. Traffic behind him.